So first up is the way uh, Lightroom is has its file structure set up. It makes a folder for itself. So when you go in and you'll create a catalog, the catalog file is right there. But when you set up a folder, it will open up or it will make a file like you see there. It can be named whatever you want. We have, of course, our like job numbers and stuff like that. Um, and then, so what I always recommend is for as you make everything, your Adobe catalog is going to point to a folder, and that's going to have your raw images in it. So as it edits, you might see it might one of the problems that I always get a question about is, hey, my photos aren't showing up or they become like desynced. It's that it can't find the folder that it wants to point to. Um, and so we'll kind of go into that with a little bit more detail as we set up because I'll get to take you all through a full uh, kind of like a small edit of a shoot. So that is the one big difference with Lightroom is it's going to make its own folder versus just sitting somewhere else. So without further ado, we will go ahead and just kind of, I'm just going to walk y'all through uh, opening up and creating a new catalog. So we'll start powering it up. Alrighty, so once Lightroom is going, so this is from a shoot we did last night, but I have, this will go down to File, New Catalog, and you can test it. We'll just say test, uh, and create, and you'll see when you do that, where I have it in there, it creates that folder right there. And then this is your actual catalog here. So now that you have your uh, now that you have your catalog up, and we of course want to bring in some photos. So I just plugged in my SD card. You'll click import, and then it'll show up on the side panel. Go in, and I just pulled some photos from other shoots and put them on an SD card. And so this is the panel that has where everything's going or where everything's coming from. And this panel over here is where everything's going. You can have metadata. We won't be getting really deep into metadata today, but if you have some preset metadata stuff for like copyright, stuff of that nature, you can have it automatically be put in on import. For a destination, this is where it's going to put your file. So we're just going to put your raw images off your SD card. I always recommend to keep everything inside that folder, just so that when you're going back through and you're trying to find something, or if it becomes desynced or if you move the folder, it's all going to be in one place versus you going out around trying to find uh, where it's actually located. I also recommend putting you can have it put it into a subfolder. So from the last shoot, I have the raw DJI. I just do the make and then the camera model essentially. So our raw DJI Mavic 3 Pro is the name of our drone. And so since these will be the raw images, I always put raw in front of it so that you remember and you're able to quickly see. Then up here is what it's going to do. So you can have it move, you can have it just add. So if you already have them transferred onto your desktop and you're wanting to move it, you can just click add, and then it'll basically just be bringing in that folder. So if you already made a folder, you can just click add. I'm going to have it copy and pull it over. So you'll click import, Up here will be your dialog boxes of what they're doing. And so once everything comes in, you'll see that you have all photographs, the previous import, all synced photographs, which kind of comes back down to stuff becoming synced and desynced. So that most time will hopefully always be at 0. And then your quick collections is something that we'll get into in just a second. And then, of course, your previous import of what you just brought in. So if you had multiple cards, you can bring in, and you want to see like, hey, I had 2 SD cards. It's going to basically change out to whatever you just imported. Then you have your folder of actually what is your raw, like where it's pointing to. This is good if you're just able to see which folders are in this catalog itself. Then on this panel is all your metadata that you're able to kind of go through. For us, we have it set up special for UA for like our job numbers, title, keywording, all that stuff. For the most part, you will not really have to deep dive into the metadata. If you're just doing kind of standard shoots, most of it's just going to be, hey, put in the copyright. So we'll go ahead, and inside this panel is the library. Then you have the development panel. Map you won't have to worry about. Making a book you won't have to worry about for slideshow, prints, or web. You're going to be living pretty much in the library, and the development are going to be your 2 main ones that you work with. So for editing, what I always recommend to do first is you're going to go through and cull your images, which is just picking out which ones you want to edit. We don't need to edit all 1,000 images that you shoot. There's going to be one that's a little out of focus, one a little bit too bright, or different expressions on faces. So we're just going to take the ones we want to do, and you can use your arrow keys or click, whichever one. But if you hit B, it will add it to the quick collection, which adds it to this right here. And so as you go through, we're just going to pick out a few that we like, that we have a few from a little event that we had past couple days. We have a few drone of construction, a few from fall assembly, and then a few from last night's drone. And if you grab one and you're like, you know what, I really don't like that, you can just hit B again and it will remove it from the quick collection. It's not deleting it, it's not removing it from the actual gallery. You have all your photos right here, but then now you're able to go into your quick collection, and as you can see, now you just have your 12 that you want to edit. So once you've gone through and you cull, you can then go into development, and this is where Lightroom gets its bread and butter. So Lightroom, and one of the big things is what's the difference between Lightroom and what's the difference between Photoshop. Lightroom is for your mass quantity, so you're editing a full shoot versus, hey, I'm editing one image, is the best way I can describe it. So Lightroom's built to edit all through, like to do these 12 images super quick, and to get them all out versus, hey, I'm going to precisely edit, color correct everything for one image. That would be more into Photoshop, and you can send images into Photoshop pretty easily also from Lightroom. So to get into the editing, you have your color profiles, Adobe Landscape. You can have it tailored just to the camera. For most of y'all, you really won't have to dive too deep into this. It's something you can kind of click to see, kind of reflect your style of what you want. It's more or less of how deep are your blacks, how deep are your reds. You can kind of see the small changes as you just click through without really doing any actual editing to the image. It's just kind of how the computer is going to read the colors. Next up is your color temp. Color temperature, of course, blue is cold. and then yellow is the warmer of an image. As you can take this little thing here, it's just, and find a piece of white, and that's telling the computer, hey, this is white, and so it's going to do its best to make it white. Sometimes it's dead on, other times it's off a little bit. There's been times where it's dead in the ballpark. There's sometimes where it gets you right in the ballpark. There's sometimes where it's super, super off and you're kind of confused of where it is. But that's one way you can kind of do a little bit quicker of an edit. And then of course, just click and drag along with the tint. If you have if it's looking a little bit greenish, so especially with fluorescent lights, you'll have a little bit more of a green tint. You can pull in a little bit more magenta. And then if it's a little bit, if it's a little bit on the other side, you can pull in the green. So next up is the exposure. Your exposure, I always describe it as the general. You can also click and drag on the actual histogram up here to pull it. If you're like, hey, I want to target the highlights, which are your brighter pixels, or your shadows, which are your, of course, more built into there. And then your blacks are your darkest part of the image, along with the whites are the brightest part of the image. So you can just click and drag that slider, pretty simple, and you can really play around with it. The other nice thing is with Lightroom is it's not editing your file back in your original document. It's kind of editing a copy of it. So anything you do on this right now, if you really screw it up and you're like, oh, I don't like that, you can still, you can click reset. It'll bring everything back, but it's not editing your original raw document. So you can really do whatever you want inside of here, from editing, erasing stuff, changing exposures, colors, whatnot, and your original document is going to be just fine. So the next up is, we'll just choose camera standard and brighten it up a little bit. You can also, if you're not looking to do it all yourself, you're kind of like, I just need to get this quickly out, you can hit auto, and auto actually does a relatively good job of getting the image just a well overall general exposed image. For my personal taste, normally it pops the whites a little bit too much, but you can just bring it up there. It really got the shadows around where I want them, along with the whites and the blacks. So we look good there. And then we can pull up. Texture is just pretty much black strokes around the pixels. So as you pull it up, you can kind of see you're going to gain a little bit more of that grain into it. If you pull it down, it looks really, really soft. Clarity is another variation of doing that, of how it just kind of moves basically a black ring around each pixel. Dehaze does a little bit with it's almost like a different version of contrast exactly, but it kind of takes away the very, very bright pixels that sometimes you'll have a little bit of a haze in an image, especially with like when I'm up there doing the drone, you'll have a few, you can kind of see it in the far distance that you'll be able to fix. With dehaze, vibrancy is of course how much color, so kind of like how rich your pixels are, and saturation does a very similar thing. So for this image here, I pretty much have it where I want it, and so we can pretty much be like, okay, that's good. We'll go ahead and move on to the next one. So for this one, we have a little bit of problem of where it's a little crooked, and I want it to be a little bit tighter on the people in the far back. So if you come up here, you go to the crop, and you can click and drag and kind of move it around to where you want it to be, and also turn it a little bit. So now we have it a little bit tighter, and you can just click or just hit enter, and there you go. There's your newly cropped image. You can choose the aspect ratio if you're wanting it to be cropped to a 5:7. So if you're going to print it out, or if you're wanting it just for Instagram, you can do a square crop of 1:1. If this is unlocked, you can adjust it however you want. Having it locked will keep it in the correct like aspect ratio, so you're not getting really weird sizes. So I'll go ahead and get that back down into where we want it. And also for the angle, you can use this to adjust that. We'll get that locked down there. And then we'll go ahead and we'll just hit auto to see what it gives us. It actually did a really good job that time. So we'll brighten it just a little bit. Maybe pull up the clarity just slightly. And I feel good with that image, so we're able to move on to the next one, which I actually skipped one of here. So for here, we can edit a little bit different of a way. The tone curves is something that I know kind of scares a few people because it's a much more precise version of editing. So you're actually able to take, by clicking here, you're able to target certain pixels inside of there by bringing them, you can kind of see it and how much it comes down, or you can bring it way up. So you're really able to target very specific exposures inside, and you can see it moving around inside that on the curve of where exactly it's going. You can also click on the curve to pull it down. But a lot of times if I'm doing an edit, I'll be utilizing this to kind of target very specific brightness of, if I'm wanting to pull down the very specific level of highlights, very specific area of darks to add a little bit more contrast and stuff like that. And also inside these curves, you can specifically be targeting certain colors to add more red, less red. You can really hit anything you need inside of here. This is much more, I will say just off top, this is a much more advanced area of editing, but it's an area you can kind of play around with and to see what you can hit without actually having to touch any of this. These are much more broad strokes where even for us, like all of us in the photography department probably live about 80% in here. So we'll go ahead and we'll do camera portrait for this one, if it will go. And with using the tone curves, it is not either or. So you can actually edit a little bit. You can do your precise editing and then come back into the tone curve. You can also do it, the reversal of, hey, I did some editing and I want, this is still a little bit too bright in here, so I'm going to come in and pull it down. Or, oh, I need it be a little bit brighter, so I'm going to come back in after editing in the general to be more specific. That one's good there. We can also, we'll do, and also in here, you can choose out the monochromes. They have, let me go back. If you guys click on this, you can see the full Adobe RAW of like everything they have for the color profiles in this. If you want it to be one of your favorites, you just click the little star and it will stay in this little panel here. But so if we did a black and white, you now don't have to really worry about colors. More or less just black and whites, or more or less just like exposure and the contrast. What you want to see with that. and then click there and bring it down. And there's that image. Feels pretty ready to go. That we don't make much adjustment. Then we have a big owl. For this one, we'll actually skip ahead a little bit so that we can work with some masks. So this one already did a little bit of editing with it. That we have Adobe Portrait, all the adjustments to it. But for the masks, so you knew, and when I say new, within like I believe the past year, they've really started rolling out stuff with AI inside Lightroom. And so for this, you have subject, sky, and background. So you can easily select, just click that. It'll say detecting the sky. And it does a really good job of finding the sky. And you can now you're only editing the sky. With that, also, if you had multiple images of, like we have this, we'll be able to click sync and add that mask in. And the AI will find the sky in that other image. And so one thing to say is that sometimes the AI does mess up. So be ready for that, just to kind of take a look through. It is newer technology, so it does mess up from time to time. But you're able to make adjustments if you're wanting to pull down the whites a little bit, maybe bring back the sky, because a lot of times the sky will be blown out. You can also tell it like how much, the amount of like, I guess how much the mask is over that. So you can be 200%. If you just wanted a light mask, you're able to do that, like pull it down a little bit more. And then also you can add another mask of, you can have it select the subject. So if there are people in there, you can tell it, hey, I want to select. We'll actually go back to one of the images to get that. But you're able to do brushes, linear gradients, all that, to create masks inside and to edit everything that you need, like to be a little bit more precise editing. And then also you have the ability to erase stuff. They brought in generative AI. It currently is not as good as the generative AI inside Photoshop. So I do normally recommend, if you're going to do something largely with generative AI, to take it into Photoshop. But it works very, very similarly. That's all I wanted to get rid of, a little bit of the wetness on the new chimes. It will give me, of course, I'm not able to really see it. You click out, and there you go, that it is now gone. And if you want to do it again, do it there. And if this is all for mask refinement of, if you need to subtract some, so you're like, hey, there's a little bit too much up top, there you go, you can erase it there. And if you're like, oh, I got a little bit rid of too much, you can bring it in some more. Hit apply, and it will start generating. And it will give you variations, so you can click through or click refresh. So we'll go ahead and look at that, and that did it pretty well. Like I said, like for simple things like that, it will work perfect. But for anything a little bit more major, if you're actually trying to get rid of, like if I need to get rid of that for some reason, the generative AI normally would not actually do well inside Lightroom. You also have the clone stamp, which if you work inside, you can choose locations by clicking the option button, and you're able to kind of choose where it's going to be coming from. So it's just taking a clone of wherever you're telling it to come from. If you need to fix something, like right there, and it'll do its best to fix it. But yeah, those are just the. And if you're like, hey, that really didn't work, I want to get rid of it, just click on it and then click delete, and it will remove it. So we'll now get into, to kind of stick with the masks theme, we'll come into here, and it will do a cool thing of once you go into the masks area, it'll start detecting people. And so once it detects him, it should be any time now. Then we'll see if it'll select the subject. So this is a good case of AI not knowing what's going on exactly. But if I'm wanting just him, AI has now selected this guy's head, thinking it's the subject. So you can take the brush, and it's on subtract. And so you can remove all the red is what the mask is grabbing, essentially what the mask is. So if I just wanted him, I can just go in there, refine it, get rid of all that red in there. The technology would be crazy a little bit. And same works for if you messed up a little bit and you took a little bit too much out, you can go back into with the brush. You can also do objects where if you wanted to add something, it will kind of help detect the rest of that object. But since we have him selected, we're able to do the same thing like we did with the sky, where we wanted to bring him up a little bit, adjust his colors separate from the image itself. So that once we'll just click auto real quick with it. And then you come back and just click on that there. You can see you're now editing just him. So if you wanted him to stand out a little bit more, maybe pop his color, or if he was a little bit, since he's a little bit more in the sun and you wanted the image to be a little bit darker, you can bring that down and then bring him up. If you wanted your photo to more highlight him. We will see if we'll come back to Sabin and we'll just go back to Adobe Color and we'll see if it'll be able to detect him. There we go. So once it detects a person, you now have a lot of options of, especially like if you're doing headshots, you have entire person, or you can just do the facial, just do the body skin. You can just do the eyebrows. You can do the iris, pupil, lips. Once they're detected, you can really edit whatever you want on them. But like for body skin and that, you can check those too. You can have it create them as two separate masks or as one. We'll create them as one, so you're kind of like editing the skin essentially. And if anyone was like, hey, I look a little too wrinkly, I want to be smoothed out a little bit, we can pull down the textures and the clarity just to so that he's not as, you can see the dehaze. And you can even kind of come in and give him a little bit of a tan by warming up his skin. But you can even see like what exactly you're editing. If you want to, if it's like, hey, we need it brightened a little bit. Okay, there you go. Or you can even darken it. So that's just kind of the powers of the AI when it works. Sometimes it'll take a little bit longer. You can also, and this is where Lightroom kind of earns its ability for quick editing and being able to mass edit, is so we got a football game. We have that down. We kind of have our colors where we want them. We'll do in here. If you go and you really edit an image and you're like, okay, I really like the way all my colors are and everything, you can hold shift and select multiple and then click sync. And now you can synchronize a lot from your images. So you can take color profile, which we'll just have as Adobe color. You have your white balance, exposure, contrast, highlights, all of those. You can toggle them off. So you're like, hey, I only wanted the exposure adjusted for this group of images. You can just do the exposure. So you can hit pick none, check all, whatever you're wanting. If you have an AI mask, it will also sync those masks if you want. And so when you have a mask, you'll have mask 1, mask 2, mask 3. So if I wanted the face, so if you did like a bunch of headshots, you'd be able to sync up like it would find their skin and do all your changes of softening the skin, brightening it, making them tan, etc. So, but we'll just click synchronize and it pastes the settings. And boom, there you go. This is pretty much edited straight to, that's right around that. And then all I have to do is come in, get the crop, boom, perfect, hit enter. All right, I'm good with that one. Then exposure looks pretty good on there. So now I just gotta get the crops. And so we can do the same thing with syncing here. This time we have a mask. And it's going to do the AI one of selecting him. So we'll see how well it actually does. And you can always just check the mask here. And it pretty much got him almost directly. The only thing it did was it missed a little bit on the bottom there. So if I wanted him to come in, I can come back in and add a little bit more of that there. And so now he's added there, and we're able to brighten him, darken him, but it pretty much is able to carry over each one. And then we'll just real quick get this one. With the auto, that's where like the whites a lot of times will come out a little bit too hard. But past that, that is the editing side of it, of a quick, I know it's a very fast run through. But next up, now that you have your images edited, how do I get them out of this program? So this is where you come back in and you can hit Command All, and you now have everything selected. You can go in and give them, this is where you can kind of put in your presets and all that stuff if you have all of them together. But for today, we're just going to click export. And what I'll still recommend is keeping everything in that one folder so that you're able to come back at the end of the day, think of yourself in 6 months from now when you're trying to find something of, oh, where did I put those final images? So you can see your raw images are right here. So you're able to come in and you're able to find the original. And then there is your Lightroom document also there. So we'll choose, put it there. The what to name it, I have it put it in the subfolder. You can just already have, if you already have a folder made, you can just unclick that, but you can click there to put it into a folder. So we have it where we'll go to edit, whatever you want to name it. You can do a custom name, have it date by the date, pretty much however y'all need to get it done of whatever you need. And then you have your starting number, and then the file settings of what exactly you need it exported as. Typically, it's going to be JPEG, but from time to time, you'll get a request. It's like, hey, can you do a Photoshop folder? Can you just export the original, which that will just export it if it was shot in RAW. Like for Canon, it's going to be a CR2 file. If you need to export it as a NEF for Nikon, it'll just basically just spit right out what you need it. You can choose the quality or limit size. So if you're doing something for web and they need it to be 1 megabyte, this is done in kilobytes. So you need 1 megabyte is 1,000 kilobytes. Sometimes it can compress to that. Other times it's going to get as close as it can to that resolution or to that like file size. So sometimes it can get below 1,000. Sometimes it won't be able to, but it's going to get as physically close as it can to that. Also, what contributes to file size is resolution and all that. So if you were doing something for web, normally around like 75 pixels per inch. You can also do it by centimeters if you prefer that. But if you're doing something for print, you'd want it around 300. And if you're doing it for print, file size doesn't matter. But quality, if you need it to be pulled down, like if you're doing a proof, something of that nature. For us, we have it resized to stuff, but you can also just uncheck that. Or if you have it that, oh, I need to be long edge, a certain amount of megapixels, percentage, etc. That is where you'll find that. Those are going to be more specific requests. So that's just so y'all know if someone says, hey, I needed 1,000 pixels on the long edge, you'd be able to do that. Or a certain height and weight, or height and then you can also choose your metadata. So you can choose just to do copyright only. We do all metadata so that Photo Shelter is able to read all the keywording and all that stuff. You can have it export with anything you really want. Normally, copyright and contact info only is something I do like for my personal work so that people are able to see that, but they're not able to see the camera settings because your metadata has, did your camera flash fire? What was your shutter speed, ISO, all that. So you can just do copyright only if you want to. And then after, you can tell it to do nothing. You can tell it to show it in Finder. You can also tell it to go into Photoshop. That's just kind of up to your what you're feeling or what you need to have happen once it's done. And so we'll go ahead and we'll click export, and you'll see it goes up there. Depending on file sizes and everything, might take a little bit of time, but then once it's done, it will appear, and it should already have the file made right there. And so they'll have their happy home right there once they're done. As you can see, it starts to populate. So yep, that is very, very quick and dirty of Lightroom. It's a lot of information. That's the reason why I tell people to kind of play around with it. All these programs that we are discussing take years to learn and fine tune, and we're still fine tuning them as they come out with new features. So I always recommend playing around with it, have a little fun with it. And there you go. It opens up, and so now you have your JPEGs that are your edited images.